Coming to you live is the Auto Hub Show, changing automotive one show at a time with Ian and Jeff. And here we go.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of a company called Retail Resilient, social selling for the car industry. And we help auto dealers, auto agencies, and vendors in the auto industry sell more cars, service more cars, and make more money using our social selling strategy. That includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and anything else you can think of. So if you're looking to invest thousands and make millions, we're definitely the social selling company for you. Like I said, who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
If you run a service drive, you know these days first impressions matter. But when your advisors are tied up with inbound phone calls, they tend to neglect their other, more important duties. And did you know 75% of all service calls are frequently asked questions and routine requests? Still, the average dealer misses up to 30% of inbound calls, adding up to a ton of missed service opportunity and increased customer churn. 68% of callers actually go elsewhere if they can't get through, which means you could be losing $60,000 to $70,000 every month in service revenue simply from missing calls. So who will pick up? Introducing Brooke.
Hi there.
Your best service scheduling assistant. Brooke is the first intelligent digital voice assistant to answer, handle, and appoint all of your inbound service calls. And talking to Brooke is like talking to a friend with human-level understanding in a friendly conversational voice. Her conversational intelligence is built on millions of actual service industry conversations. Book with Brooke today. Visit Brooke.ai or call 866-942-1236. Finally, the perfect match.
Our goals are always to improve. Every month we want to improve better on what we did the month before, maybe the year before. It's about how fast we can get the cars done with quality work to get it to the front line, because that's where we make our money. And the bottom line is the longer it takes, the more money you spend. We want to get it down as low as possible. Right now, like I said, we're in a great stage. We're at 4.5 days. In recon, we want to know how quickly we can get the cars out of the recon process and to the front line. The average days in recon and then the time to line are the most important things that we look for. I'm Mike Burrell. I'm Service Director at JM Lexus.
Larry Feldman is probably the most amazing trainer that I've ever experienced in this business. I've been in the car business now for 35 years, and I've seen quite a few trainers. A lot of them are pretty good. I mean, really, I get something out of all of them that I've seen, really. But Larry is in another class. I really mean that. His training is literally riveting. A little while back, I sat in on his first training that I ever sat in on. It was for new hires. I still remember. I'll never forget it. About 25 people in the room who'd never sold cars before. And after 2 hours, I raised my hand and Larry stopped what he was doing and said, yes. And I said, maybe we should take a break. And literally, I'll never forget it. All 25 people turned around, looked at me and went, well, we're okay. And he kept going for another 2 hours. Since then, I've seen a few other of his trainings. I've hired people out of his classes. All I can say is, you got to give him a try.
How we're here, the questions are varied and all sorts of stuff. I will start, Ian will start us with just a lead in, give me 2 minutes, just a lead in video, just with our little 58 Corvette doing a burnout. And then we'll ask you to introduce yourself. And we got Mr. Don Brady here, the king of the Air Jordans, and from Ship Your Car Now. And we'll get you to tell us a bit about yourself, Tom. And we always say hi to Peter because we just love Peter. And he's also our favorite person to beat up EV people, so we'll get him to tune in the EV podcast. And that's about it. And nobody's going to ask any questions like, why the heck did your company step on that dog last week, that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah, let's go, Jeff.
okay. Okay.
Fair enough. Sounds good to me.
Okay. Ian, did you turn the speakers off completely?
When you're inbound,
We have a speaker.
they neglect their other.
Forget it. Okay, here we go.
There we go.
Let's go. Going live now.
And you've got your sponsor reel playing.
And did you know?
Nothing's playing yet.
75% of all service calls are frequently asked questions.
Just unplug them.
Okay.
Can you hear that? There. That might help. No, it's not.
That's better.
Much better.
I don't hear any feedback now.
We turned off. We got some monitors so that maybe some people listening could hear what you guys say, but that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, we'll talk loud. Ian, if we put the speakers down on the table, that might help.
If you want, sure.
Yeah. Shall we? Try the speakers on the table. That's
Just a comment off to Don there.
Yeah.
Congratulations on 10-0.
Congratulations on 10-0.
For the Cleveland Browns?
No. OSU.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll take that. Congratulations.
Okay, here we go. Okay,
Yeah.
ready to go.
Ready to go.
Going live now.
And by the way, we'll be live on LinkedIn and
No, right.
sorry, we are live on LinkedIn. Hi.
I think we just
Sharing the screen.
Who is Don from Ohio?
yeah. Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the Auto Hub Show live from San Diego Used Car Week, and it's starting to fill up here. And we're the first podcast, the first event, the first everything, and we feel very honored. And this is Jeff. We've got Ian there with his library behind him, and me with the real thing. We have joining us live here today, live at the show, our good friend Don Brady from Ship Your Car Now, aka Batman, aka Phantom of the Automa Raw, and probably one of the most fun people we know. Don, can you say hi, introduce yourself? And,
Hi, everybody. I'm Don Brady from the Vice President of Dealer Success for Ship Your Car Now, and I'm very excited to be at Used Car Week and one of the first guests, or the first guest on your show.
You
So
betcha.
thank you.
The first guest at Used Car Week, too.
So go ahead, Jeff.
And next we have with us, joining us from the vacation capital of North America, Detroit, Michigan, Tom Gregg. Tom, can you introduce yourself, your company? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks guys for introducing me. And my name is Tom Gregg. I'm the founder and CEO of Vehicle Acquisition Network. We help dealers to buy cars from private sellers. And my background is automotive. I've sold cars at 18 years old, and I've been very fortunate to help a lot of dealers throughout the US and Canada to buy a lot of cars from private sellers.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. We do have to acknowledge Peter Smith, who's not officially a guest, but he's one of our favorite people. So, as I said earlier, our favorite EV lover and basher. I had to throw lover in there so nobody get mad at you, Peter. So, I'm going to throw out the first question here. What do you think the value is of having an event such as Used Car Week? And I must tell you, this is massive. I could not believe this. I think this is bigger than NADA, and congratulations to Bill Zadice and Joe Overby of Cherokee Media. So I'm going to ask Don first. What do you think? What do you think about this?
Well, I was talking to Bill about it this morning. I think every dealer in the country should be at this show. And the reason is because it feels like with what's going on with the OEMs and new cars, that used cars have always been important, but I think right now it's the most important part of the automobile industry. So meetings like this, I think they're like a think tank, meeting of the minds, new ideas. I think this is the place, and I love that it's in San Diego and not in Las Vegas. No offense to Las Vegas, I'm very glad that it's in San Diego.
Well, you know, there's too many distractions in Las Vegas. Oh my golly, you know, the only distraction here is as I look out across the bay at the palm trees and the military ships, which I love. That's the only distraction. Tom, what's your opinion? I'm a used car guy, and every time I've been to anything used car, they say there's at least 3 times as many used cars sold as new cars. So, what do you think the benefit of this sort of balance?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the event Used Car Week I attended last year and prior years. So regretfully, I wasn't able to attend with my schedule this year, but looking forward to the following. One of the key things I really enjoy about the event is collaboration among the different vendors and the dealers, but also the relationships. So I attend quite a few events throughout the year, primarily for connecting with other individuals. The relationships are so vital. And even though we're conducting this via Zoom, but Zoom just doesn't compare to in-person connections.
Oh, look, we just went over the speaker here. Now everybody jumped up. We scared him when you started to speak. But you know, relationships are certainly much what it is. I remember, you know, Ian and I at too much feedback.
Yeah.
Um, we seeing people that we'd only seen on a computer screen for years, and it's just like you know everybody. And the beautiful thing really is the fact that, you know, we build our business on relationships. All these trainers talk about build that relationship, sit down and build something with this person, qualify them on the retail sales floor. Even service advisors ask the question. So you're coming in for service. Where do you drive? And yet we forget about that. Ian.
Yeah, so I had a question for you on the ship your car front. I mean, obviously we're here for a used car week. What can dealers do to, you know, really help on the shipping of car side?
Well, what I say constantly, I feel like I'm preaching at times, but dealers are awesome at what they do. Let guys like me help them do what we're best at, and that's help them with the transportation. And also, inventory obviously is still an issue. And the neat thing about what we can do is we literally can help them transport vehicles from anywhere in the country. So not only are there customers they're selling to nationwide, but where they buy the cars from and source their vehicles are nationwide. So literally, you can cherry pick, you can from one vehicle to truckloads from all over the country. And the other thing is we kind of have the pulse of what's going on in the transportation world. So I help my dealers and I say, maybe you shouldn't buy out of Florida right now, but moving from Michigan or from whatever, I can tell them where the least expensive areas to buy because it changes.
But Don, I've heard there's some great deals on a couple of Ferraris and McLarens in Florida.
There is. So, oh yikes. But yeah, they can literally they can source their inventory from literally anywhere in the country, and I can help them get it there.
So what you're telling me is there's some ins and outs more than just moving a car of sort of where you should buy that car from a physical,
right?
Other than price, is that what you're saying?
Well, price is obviously a big part of it, but also the types of vehicles. I mean, you might find a Malibu that's got 2,000 miles on it that it might be $300 more, and it might be in a different part of the country that you wouldn't have thought of before. And I can now help you get that unique vehicle, even though it's a Malibu, it's not very unique, but the 2,000 miles might make it unique.
Right.
So bring it to your store.
So those cars that maybe are not as valued in one market may be a better buy or those kind of things.
Correct.
Okay.
And a lot of times sometimes dealers will take a car and wholesale it because they don't feel they have the market for it in their area. So now someone that does have a good market for it can grab that vehicle and bring it to their area. And I can help them with that from anywhere, literally anywhere in the country.
Rock and roll. Jeff?
So, Tom, tell me something. What do you do? What does your business do that can help dealers, used car dealers especially, do better?
Yeah, thanks for asking the question. Well, it's very clear over the past couple of years that there's been a vital interruption to the supply chain for new vehicles. So you have dealers that are having to focus on used cars to sell because they're simply not getting enough trades to supply. And then the alternative is to go to the auction, typically to buy cars. So if a dealer needs inventory, often the fastest way is to go to the auction and they acquire cars. That no longer is an option for many dealers, primarily being because the other parties there that are also in need of new cars are rental car companies. So Avis, Hertz, Enterprise, they need cars very bad. And if they're not getting new, they have to go buy very new-like vehicles. And rental car companies don't have the same playbook as what car dealers have. So they're not buying it to resell it. They're buying it to put it into fleet, into use. So therefore, they can afford to pay a lot more than what a dealer can pay for a used car. So the question is then, if rental car companies are driving the prices of used cars up at the auction, where does a dealer go to buy cars? Where do they go? They, in many cases now, they can't go even to rental car companies to buy the cars that are taken out of service. So we've seen some companies now are only liquidating that inventory through some of the larger publicly traded, like Carvana. So the options that dealers have are declining, fewer and fewer choices for where to find cars. I found my company in 2013 out of my need as an alternative to the auction. And so what we do is we help dealers through an alternative channel to buy cars, used cars specifically. And these are cars directly from private sellers. These are people in their backyard that have posted their vehicle for sale by owner. Think of Auto Trader, Craigslist, Cars.com, Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, Car Gurus. If you name the source, we probably have all those listings. And these are dealers across the US and Canada. So we're helping hundreds of dealers throughout North America to buy used cars directly from private sellers. And these are cars that are often turning faster at higher profit margins than where they can source them elsewhere.
Perfect. Now that's quite the good thing, because there definitely is a opportunity to pick up vehicles there, and why should the giant tech companies just be getting them from the private individuals? And by the way, Don doesn't believe in shipping for those guys. He didn't say that.
No.
And Peter, but what are your thoughts on this?
On the shipping aspect or the inventory aspect?
Used cars.
Used cars? Well,
Yeah.
right now, as we're aware, the old term was 1-to-1 as new to used. Now it's about a 1-to-3 new to used, because that's only where the profitability is in a dealership. This conference that you're at is a spectacular event to showcase the abilities to raise that up in the average dealership that has no knowledge of getting to that point. Companies like that are out there that are assisting companies or dealerships in doing it are just, I don't even have the word for it really. They're just necessary to get people up to speed, because there's so much coming. Ian and I have had many conversations that the next 6 months is going to determine the next 6 years of the car dealerships out there, because we have to transition, and the ability of giving the visibility is necessary right now.
So Jeff, as we're talking about used cars, I mean, obviously there's been some adjustments in value, whether it be Black Book or Cox Automotive or other people locally. Does anyone have any thoughts on the adjustment of value?
Well, I'll give you my thought, frankly. The adjustment in value is not at the Black Book level, the Kelly Blue Book level, or whatever. I believe people should be looking at the MMR is kind of good on for the Mannheim, but one thing that I've always been successful doing is looking at the online advertisers for dealers that actually show the pricing, the retail pricing, and then making your own decision from there. What do you think, Tom?
With respect to some of the larger ones, can you clarify, please?
Just for the adjustment in values, where do you think they're going?
Yeah, well, we have seen a trend of values continuing to decline. So I think it's clear that they're on the downward slide. So I think it's likely synonymous with what we're hearing about the economy as well. So we keep hearing talks of recession, and that it's one that we're going to likely see in 2023. So I think it's quite natural that there's going to be a correction of the prices of used cars.
Well, so obviously you aren't a politician who is running for re-election who's saying on one side that the economy is going to get better and the other side is we're in trouble. Dawn, where you just mentioned too that it's not just shipping for you. It's you're providing a service, all sorts of things. And are there certain areas where you're seeing a bigger decline other than Florida? Yes. Um, in values and some you're seeing a big spike?
Well, I think there was all through the pandemic. There was obviously inventory was always an issue, and there was still pockets of the country that had inventory where other pockets didn't, and a lot of the dealers that weren't afraid of going out and sourcing vehicles from all over the country. Used cars, and I mean, I think in a way our industry got a little bit spoiled with the used car prices going so high that they stopped even really worrying about how many days turn they had. I think we're as they do start coming down, we got to think about turn again, and maybe you don't want to sit on a used car for for 2 months, 3 months, and they're not because maybe they're not going to sell as fast as they were when prices were high and the inventory was low and they became hot commodities. So now you have to. And we've always had that mindset that turn is important, and obviously you can't let used cars sit on your lot and get stale. So you just got to pay attention. I mean, there was dealers that were fearless. I mean, as I traveled the country, I was impressed because I call it fearless that they were buying vehicles when the prices were extremely high, and all they said was, all we got to do is just mark them up and sell them. Who cares what we pay? Let's mark them up and sell them. And you're still going to make money on them. And then there was other dealers that I watched their lots go down to 5 or 6 used cars because they were scared or nervous, or they were like, maybe we shouldn't grab up all these used cars because what happens if the market turns? Now I'm stuck with all this water on my lot. So I applaud the dealers that were fearless. I understand the dealers that were a little bit skittish about it, but I think we're getting back to where we looking at the turn and how fast we move them is back to being important again. And again, source them from anywhere. If you need help, I'd love to help show you different pockets of the country that are because and I can tell because my fearless dealers, they're in North Carolina and they're buying out of Michigan. There's some that are buying former Canadian vehicles. I mean, there's all kinds of areas you can source inventory from. You have to be a little bit fearless, I think, is the word I keep using.
Well, I'll tell you, there's some real fearless people somewhere because I'm seeing Kia EV6s and Hyundai Ioniq 5s going for the equivalent of $60,000 US. So, hoo-hoo, somebody's fearless.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the Inflation Reduction Act, I know it's been on David Long's show quite a bit. They went into that. When you look at the moving of inventory between Canada and the U.S., when you look at fight from the manufacturer and the politicians on which electric cars are going to qualify,
Yep.
and then of course there's the discussion about I need that 28,895 or 24,888 electric car on my lot to bring people in, but what am I actually going to stock? So I think that's going to be the interesting question. But more importantly, and I think this has come up on the show I watch with David Long all the time on Fridays,
Yep.
on Clubhouse, by the way, is really like what does the dealer need to do to turn that inventory? And more importantly, if they can't turn it, they're going to have to turn quickly because as markets change. So what do you recommend there? I mean, obviously you're not just shipping cars they buy, but the cars they sell too, right?
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, we ship right to the customer's driveway, and I again, I've been very fortunate because I get to travel and talk to dealers all over the country. I still walk into dealerships that say that the internet's a fad, it's going to go away, or they say that they don't buy cars from anywhere outside of their local market, or they don't sell cars from out of their local market. And again, that's pretty fortunate for them that they're able to do that, and if they can get enough inventory and sell enough inventory that they don't have to leave their market area, that's awesome for them. But not everybody has that. And as far as getting rid of the vehicles or selling the vehicles, I think again, I was a general manager. I was 22 years in the car business, and I have always believed that my customers weren't just in my local area that could hear my radio ads or see my newspaper ads or see my TV commercials. Now, and social media has really blown it up so much. Your customers are literally anywhere in the United States and actually the world. I mean, I just had somebody reach out to me today and say, "Hey, can you get a vehicle to Dubai?" And the answer is yes. I can get them anywhere in the world.
So are you seeing movement like internationally? I mean, is that something that you think you're going to see moving into the U.S. market? I mean, obviously outside of, but
I think when it comes to a buyer, like a customer, a person that wants that whatever car it is that is a specialty car or it's just important to them, now it's, you don't have to just go on autotrader.com to find those cars. You can find them anywhere in the world. And yes, I have people from out of the country all the time that hey, what's it cost to ship a vehicle? And I can literally help them from anywhere in the country get those vehicles. Not so much new cars, but the pre-owned cars.
And obviously, to ask about the vehicle acquisition network, I mean, dealers who are looking to buy cars at scale, like, what does that look like? How do you get that started? And more importantly, what's your recommendation?
For buying, so we have a team of performance managers that help coach and train dealers in success in this space. The reality is selling cars to sellers is quite a bit easier than buying cars from private sellers. When a consumer researches what car they're going to purchase, they check the price, they verify the store that they're going to purchase from, and they go in or they inquire about it. That's a highly intended buyer. And so the closing ratio of these buyers is much higher than a dealer calling a private seller that's posted a car on Craigslist cold. So we help dealers to navigate this area because, very frankly, it is very challenging to buy cars from private sellers. Many try, not all make it, but we train how to execute. So we help them to build a process. We encourage that they have a dedicated buyer that their sole responsibility is to buy cars from private sellers. If this individual has other responsibilities, perhaps they buy from the service drive, or they do KBB ICO, or maybe they sell cars. We don't see a correlation to success as high if there are alternative actions these individuals do, because typically, naturally, it's the path of least resistance. So if there are other responsibilities the individuals have, they're typically going to pick the one that's going to be easier rather than the one that's harder. Now, like most things that are not always easy and quite difficult often have more fruit on there as well. So if dealers that do master it and do figure out how to have success in buying cars, there's often a very rewarding path related to these.
So I had a question for you. I mean, what's realistic for a dealer that like wants to buy, say, 20 to 50 cars a month? I mean, is that a realistic short-term goal?
Yeah, well, I would say short term is a pretty vague term there, but it certainly is a reasonable target for most. We typically see that the average dedicated buyer is going to be 15 to 20 cars per person. Now, again, there are the anomalies. One buyer can buy 35 or 40, but by and large, that's not the norm. So, and we do have dealers that do see success. For example, we have a dealer in Adrian, Michigan. It's a Cliff Buick GMC that's been with us for 6 or 7 years. And they buy routinely 60 to 70 cars a month in a very, very rural area of Michigan. So the question of can I buy 20 to 30 cars? Absolutely.
So, Jeff, maybe you have a question on the used car side there in terms of how do you buy your used car lot, your new car lot? How do you buy enough cars and sort of what's the best tactic there in addition to staff?
Well, first of all, I actually want to give a typical broadcast shout out to David Long. We wanted him on today. He's feeling kind of sick. Tom tells us he's fighting the flu. So, hey, thanks, David. Appreciate the opportunity, anyways, and feel better. My opinion, and please somebody tell me, Don, I'm going to ask you this. Does it really matter where you get it if you have crappy attitude?
Well, no, you're gonna have a positive attitude no matter what. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, but as far as where you get the used cars, I mean, if you can buy them locally for the right pricing,
Yeah.
you certainly can do that. And that's the best thing. But if you can't source them, you don't have to go to the traditional auction anymore. I mean, not trying to take anything away from auctions, but there's online platforms. There's dealer-to-dealer sales through those online platforms. There is
Tom's business.
So many places out there that you can source used cars. I mean, look at all of them.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, and I mean, Tom, will come to you in a second on the same question, but attitude, in my opinion, has always been everything. You know, you mentioned about getting a car in the service drive. Well, you know, having run dealerships and trying to get a salesperson to hang around the service drive, you know, it's like getting them to move cars. But Tom, you know, and again, attitude is you look at Don here. Okay, I hate to pump him up, but he's our favorite because he's got the best tie in the world. You can't see it, but it's flashing. But it is attitude. You know, people are shipping cars, so ship your car now because of Dawn. I just remember that the president of Ship Your Cars Now, that Dawn's awesome. But Tom, where does the attitude fit in? Obviously, we think we know the answer, but your opinion.
Yeah, the old saying is that attitude is everything. And you referenced David Long. I first started working with David Long, it was in 2015, and he had a very rigid process, rigid as in it was tried and true. And his step zero on his steps to the sale, or in this case, the steps to the acquisition, step zero is attitude. You must, and a positive attitude. You must have a positive attitude. It's step zero, not even one. So you don't even start your day if you're having an off day. And, you know, occasionally we all have off days. So the question is, how important is attitude? It's everything. So the recommendations that we have for dealers as they're looking for an acquisition person of who is the ideal fit for the job, there's three main things, and a fourth one that's more process driven. First one is a positive attitude. Somebody that has a positive disposition to work. They enjoy working. Number two is good communication skills. And three is a good work ethic. So if somebody is a hard worker, they're able to speak to consumers and they have a positive attitude, more times than not, that person's going to succeed. The fourth component that I said is more process driven is that the individual has access to fair, market-based, efficient pricing. So they have access to some kind of tool that they're able to communicate values to consumers that's based on a market value, not something that's really low, just aiming for home runs or aiming for the fence. But attitude is one of the most important attributes of success for buying cars.
Definitely is. So what you're saying here is that
Don't instruct people to initial contact somebody. You don't want to sell your car, do you?
No, that's not going to work.
Well, and again, Ian will get you to ask the next question, but attitude is true because you see salespeople, and we see it now with the situation of no new cars to sell, and with some people, lots of used cars, but a lot of money, but they'll walk up to people like the good old days. My favorite line right now, Peter, you can attest to this, is we've gone back to the 80s, which is, hey, can I help you? No? Okay, bye. So,
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at it, it's interesting when you look at dealers. There's a big dealer in where we're from, and they just built a large tower, which is an office tower with 3 stores of indoor storage for new cars, and they have salesmen at each floor that are scattered. And it's so unusual to have someone walk in the dealership that they don't even pay attention to you at all. So that's, I think, one of the bigger challenges. But when you're looking at the age of no inventory, it's like, well, put an order in or come back, or we don't really care. So at the end of the day, I think that shift is going to happen as we roll into 2023. But more importantly, whether or not that person's buying a vehicle, obviously you want to buy that person's vehicle if they got one, right?
Well,
Peter, what do you think?
If you look at that scenario where inventory is low, salespeople are COVID drunk from the high profitability of their products, and they're making 5 times what they normally make on a commission. The issue is that they're not professional anymore. They're dropping the steps, they're dropping the process, they're dropping everything, and they don't care because they don't have to. For one car that they're selling is equivalent to 5. So when we used to talk about a good salesperson at 10 cars a month, they're selling efficiently 50 cars a month, like based on the profitability. So they don't care. If you walk in, it's like, I don't like the way that guy's dressed, so I'm not going to talk to him because I'm not going to waste my time. I'm going to wait till the guy comes in that I want to talk to. And it's all got to change. And it's when we see this opening up of the new inventory, the used inventory is going to be the challenge, where you're going to find the dealerships that are heavy in the water with their used car inventory, and these people have to be followed up on, and they have to be worked on, and they have to be professionally looked after, and all the steps have to come into play. And as it was as said, the professional attitude and the positive attitude is key. I remember back in the day when we used to have mirrors on our phones, and we had to look in the mirror when we talked to people, and it just to show what we look like to ourselves when we're talking to them, to keep that positive attitude up. And that's going to come back. All these little tricks are coming back, because I know from my shopping experience in the last little while, it wasn't pleasant. And I bought a new car and a used car in the last 3 months, and the used car outweighed the new car in the positive attitude.
Well, I have to add something to that, because this particular dealer that Ian spoke about is located in downtown Vancouver, Canada, and it for someone to walk in there is an effort. They have to park underground. They have to walk there. There's really nothing around there but a restaurant or two. So you're going to get, I've always been taught there's only two people that come into a dealership. There's somebody who wants to buy a car and somebody who wishes they could buy a car. And same thing with an online lead or whatever. Don, when he gets somebody contacts him about shipping, they don't do it because there's nothing better to do in their day. Looking at cars is fun, and the only person I know who does that is that guy right over there, Ian. But but his day starts at 5 a.m. and ends at 1 a.m., so he's got lots of time for that.
Yeah. So what do you think on the question about customers, but more importantly, dealerships where they have new car salesmen or used car salesmen that maybe have gotten a little lazy? Not to say that's true.
Well, and lazy is a harsh word, but it's a word that I have used and or told salespeople at times. I think that if Carvana and Vroom did anything, they did prove that there is a percentage of customers that will buy a car sight unseen and ask that it be shipped to their door, whether it be their driveway or their work, right? So not everyone does that. So you as a dealership, you got to be ready on all fronts for the people that do walk in, for the people that call in, for the people that email in, for the people that click on your buttons at the middle of the night on your website. I mean, it's all those things. So you got to be ready for all of them, because we're better than the Vrooms and the Carvanas of the world, because we do service, we do all those things. As far as the level of and I hate saying this too, but there's a level of cockiness that's been happening.
Tell me more.
Well, someone calls into a dealer and says, "Hey, you've got that new vehicle I was looking at, and it's $25,000 over MSRP. Will you take any less?" And they say, "Well, good luck finding one." And they basically hang up on the customer. And there may be a dealer out there that will sell it for a little bit less than $25,000 over MSRP. So, and maybe the answer is that no, you're not going to take less than $25,000, but there's a better way of handling that customer.
You mean saying if do you want to buy? Buy. You don't want to buy? Bye.
Well,
Isn't the right way?
Well, it's always kind of been that way. I mean, if you have a certain unique vehicle and your price is good. I used to have customers or salesmen come up to me and say, "Hey, Don, I've got a customer that's calling from New York. We're in Ohio, and they want to know if that's our best price on a used car." And, "Oh, you want a good buy? Goodbye." Well, that's not what you need to do. I mean, I used to call the customer back as the general manager, and I would say, "Hey, our price is so good on this used car. I've got people calling from New York." And he'd say, "Oh, I'm in New York." Exactly. That's why I'm calling you back. And I try to, again, show him the reasons we're asking what we're asking, and build more value in what we're doing, and not just no and then hang up on him. I mean, and that level of rudeness is out there. Like you're calling because we only have one of those in stock, and you're calling me from out of state, and just hang up on them is not going to build future value for your store with that customer.
Well, it's interesting. We were talking about this, or at least it was, I think, on the All Things Used Car show. They were talking about Save a Deal meetings, one of the listeners. And the thing that was interesting was it's like, okay, when you look at leads, and they were talking specifically on another show about the percentage of leads that dealers get electronically, that around 30% still don't get any response at all in 2022. So you'd think even if you have inventory, why are you not doing that? Now, I'll use the example of my sister-in-law. She was in town here. My brother lives in L.A., and she blew up her Land Rover I guess she didn't maintain them properly. Anyway, so she went to a Volvo dealer to buy a Volvo, probably the most boring car on earth. No offense needed, but
Very safe.
But she was like, well, they only had the one car, so that's what I bought. So I thought that was kind of interesting. She's like, well, they're like, you can order one and take about 3 months. She goes, no, I kind of need it today.
Well, and again, she should have looked anywhere in the United States and then called me. I would have got it to her.
See, Ian, you didn't do your job. You should
Oh,
have
I
said,
know.
call Don Brady.
They didn't even call me. She just bought a Volvo. Yeah.
Well, I got a question for everybody here. Okay, we're all car guys and car ladies who are on there. Doesn't it piss you off when somebody you know well, closely, either calls you and says, usually to glean advice from you, I'm going to use the term glean, there's stronger words, and then just goes and does their own thing, or then goes and buys something and then says, did I do the thing right? Tom?
I don't get too worked up about that, but I hear where you're coming from. Yeah. So if they choose not to take my thoughts, then it's ultimately their purchase decision. So have at it.
Well, what I love is in the days when I was in a franchise dealership, and they'd call you and they'd ask you, and people you knew well, and you'd sit down and you'd do the thing that all the trainers say you don't do. And what the trainers say you don't do is, the old joke, you gross your friends, right? Because that way they're going to come back to you later. But me, I always took care of them. I always gave them the best price I could, et cetera, and treated them well. What I hated was when I did that, and then they said, I had one guy tell me right to my face, okay, so listen, I'm going to go to 3 other dealers, and if your price is the best, I'm going to come back to you. And I said to him, I put my hand out, I shook his hand, and I said, sounds like a heck of an idea, but just buy it from somebody else, please. And that's somebody supposedly a friend. I'm being a little mean here. Sorry. Ian.
So any thoughts on how a customer can get a good deal in the current market? I mean, I know there's lots of talk. It was funny. I was trying to buy a car, and I knew the dealer personally. I did get a discount on my car that I was going to buy, but they didn't give me a price on the car that I was trying to sell them. So I just don't know if there's any tactics we can share on the used car or the new car side for customers who maybe need a car but don't want to pay the moon for it.
Well, a couple things. One, I'm back to that level of cockiness. I mean, I've heard all the horror stories from customers that I call and they say if you don't have a trade-in, you can't buy a car from us. If you're not going to finance it with us, you can't buy a car from us because we're limited. And they basically are telling the customers, if I can't make enough gross, I am not going to sell you a car. And I see both sides of it because I'm a car guy. I see both sides because if you don't have inventory, you have to make money somewhere to keep the lights on and pay your people, right? Well, I'll give you an example. I had a good customer out of Las Vegas.
Yep.
That he called me and he says, hey, I want to buy 2 Corvettes. He says, one for me, one for my wife, and I'm not looking to resell it because that's what everybody thinks. Oh, no, they're just trying to resell. And he says, I'm being told $15,000 over MSRP. And he says, I'm willing to pay MSRP, maybe $5,000 over, but I don't want to do it. So I put a picture of him and his wife and the 2 types of cars they wanted on social media, and I had dealers attacking me on social media saying, yeah, right, ha ha ha, there's no way you're going to be able to get him buy 2 vehicles for MSRP. And he was willing to order them. Well, I ended up putting a picture of him and his wife with their 2 brand new Corvettes that they bought for MSRP, and I shipped them from two different areas in the country to Las Vegas to him. And of course, they're extremely happy. He takes his to the track, she drives hers to work, right? And in Las Vegas area. So the answer was yes, there are dealerships out there that are hardlining, I'm not going to sell over MSRP, and they're still surviving, right? And I'm not telling dealers not to sell over MSRP. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But I've even heard where there was a dealer trying to get $100,000 over MSRP on a specialty Corvette.
Wow.
So, I mean, again, I applaud them if they can do that. But what I think they need to do is still concentrate on the end game to handle the not going to be able to sell, that maybe there's a pre-owned one that would work, or something, or at least treat them in such a professional way that they're not going to say, I'm never going to call that dealer again because of the way they treated me. Not that they didn't sell the car, but because how they were treated. So my answer to your question, shop all over the country. Find the car that you want from anywhere in the United States of America, and let me help you get it to you.
Fantastic. Tom, any thoughts?
I'm a more local person.
Oh,
I
okay.
think I personally,
Shop
just
local.
because I think it's important to buy local where you're going to support maybe potential relationships. So you're going to service the car, get there again. So my background, being a local car dealer, is that I really appreciated when my customers bought close to me and then serviced it back to me. Over the past 18 months, I purchased 2 new cars myself or my family, and I was able to get one locally and one that was not. The one that was local, then obviously be back to service the car locally within the dealership. But in terms of what your question was about how to find a good deal, for the one that was not locally, it was
Yeah.
much like what Don said, is you had to look around. And in my case, since I have a few friends in the business, it's about tapping those relationships and asking for some help.
Thanks very much.
Well, so tell me something, Don. How does somebody combat it? And I mean, we're a dealer show. We're not a consumer show. But how does a dealer actually combat the case where the customer says, "Look, you've got now we understand if you're the type of person that says I want 100 grand over for my Z06 Corvette. Sorry, Don. Z for us Canadian types. And if you're a Michiganer, Z you say there too. Michigander, according to the governor's ads. But how does a dealer combat that? So somebody says, so you're not totally crazy. You want 25 grand over MSRP for your Z06 Z06. And the guy says, I can get one through Drawn Brady out of Vegas and local to wherever you are for MSRP. How does somebody combat that? Or can they? Tom.
Yeah, for me, I think it's about transparency and just being genuine. So if you're just genuine and express the interest to buy locally, and that the alternative is that you're going to buy not locally from somebody else, I think it's just having a conversation. And if, like Don said earlier, is that dealers are going to do what's best for their business, whether they see the short-term profit or the long-term ramifications of potential issues by turning someone away and in some cases forcing them to buy not locally but to somebody else. So I think just having a genuine conversation and express the interest that you'd like to buy locally and that you'll buy cars in the future and you'll be back to service, and just having the conversation.
Thanks for that.
If I can just
I'm
jump in.
Oh, wait, there's a comment. Go ahead.
Sorry.
It I agree with 100% on the local purchase. I know that goes against Don, but when I started in this business and working for a brand, which everyone knows, Mercedes secured down in Canada that you were only allowed to sell 2% of your annual volume outside your area of recognition. So you were forced to sell locally as dealers. You couldn't move it about. That changed over the years, but what they still did is they attributed their CSI money back on the local sales, so you got more money on the CSI. Now, in the used car market, when Canadian values were so fantastic that we were shipping cars across the U.S. and in droves, in truckloads, I had a line of 8 semis sitting in my dealership taking cars southbound. We did 3,500 cars going down south one year. You can source cars all over the internationally and get cars, everything, but the whole key to everything is the experience.
Right.
The experience leads to the relationship. The relationship leads to longevity and loyalty and retention. And we were getting, like, we were in a small town called St. Catharines, Ontario, but we were selling to Bentonville, Arkansas. One of my biggest clients was Walmart. So
Wow.
it was.
So from an experience point of view, now that you brought that up, I mean, you're looking at experience. You're saying, okay, $35,000 over MSRP, or $100,000 over MSRP, or $5,000 over MSRP, or in my local market, I mean, one of the guys I work with bought a used BMW, so it wasn't over MSRP for a used car, but it was a ridiculous list of fees. So, gas fee, logistic fee, finance fee, whatever.
Hot dog fee.
Yeah, whatever the fees are. But the question is, no matter what you're charging, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm all for profit, but how do you train your team to say, hey, like, how are you going to explain that to a customer? Like, how are you going to deal with that? Like, I understand from a dealer perspective and a manager perspective, but from a salesperson perspective, how do you deal with that with a customer who says, hey, like, what's going on here, right? What do you think?
One of the things on that in experience is admin doc fees. What are they? They're
Hot
cash
dog fees.
they're cash straps. That's all they are. And in the Ontario market, we must dictate what they are and that we're charging them. And the reason why they're dictated out on different levels is, or presented on different levels, is it's each department's gross profit. And the salesperson doesn't get paid on it. So that's why they're there. Otherwise, it would be just a selling fee, a margin fee, whatever. And then it would be dictated out. But it's a ridiculous thing that no one can ever explain. Oh, well, this is what a percentage of the profit that we split up between this department so that they can get paid so we can increase our gross profit. Well, that doesn't make sense. What's your margin for? It's
Well, one thing I have to admire is, and I'm not sure if they do it still down here in the States, is on the Monroney label, the sticker on the side that said added dealer profit. You got to admire somebody that says, look, here's my extra profit because I cannot get this car. And I've talked to a bunch of dealers too that say, look, I'm asking way too much, or I've got a high price way too much. This is the only car I'm getting. However, I'll order you one. Whenever it comes, it comes. And, literally, the customer gets to make the decision. And we've had them do that. And what do you run into, Tom? And so, because you're the acquisition guy, are you seeing dealers paying big money and kind of cutting their profit, or trying to get big money on top of that?
In terms of the used cars or the new cars?
On the used cars, because you're the used car side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think somebody referenced earlier about paying up for cars and then just charging more. Um, I when I was a dealer, I was a V Auto dealer, and most of our stores are V Auto dealers as well. And it's all about velocity. So it's all about having the vehicles that are properly merchandised to turn. And so I think it's important that the cost up days I'm not as fond of or in as agreement of. So for me, it's about where is your vehicle going to be ranked within comparable vehicles like yours. So I'm more proponent for market-based pricing rather than just cost up.
Yeah, well, it's the only way because, frankly, if everybody else in the market has your Cherokee for a certain price, but yours is a few grand more, but all everybody has to do to expand their look in the market is just click, 10 miles, 20 miles, 50 miles,
Right.
100 miles, and then they can get a hold of Don Brady if they're 100 miles or more away.
Well, we were talking about it, Jeff. I mean, at the hotel we're staying at, they had a 5% surcharge for cost of living and staff, which I thought was interesting. But more importantly, as you look at changes in the business, changes from a regulation point of view, change in market conditions, eventually, I mean, if you don't play well with others, eventually, I guess even these politicians might, not to get political, but the Moroni
Not
sticker,
Ian.
I mean, the whole reason for that was back in the day, dealers had no regulation of what they could charge. So I think that's something long term is going to be certainly interesting. What do you think? What do you think, Tom?
Well, a couple things. One, I don't know if you guys saw where the CEO of Ford stepped up and said it's ridiculous how the dealers are overcharging their customers. Which I mean, and as a car guy, it angered me, right? And then to be a salesperson advocate, I have a good friend of mine that he actually is a car, and he sold a car for $25,000 over MSRP, and he got paid a $300 flat. So I really think dealers have to take care of their salespeople on the front line. That's a whole different subject, but it's just that popped in my mind as we were talking. But I don't know. I think we got to do what we have to do to keep our inventories full and selling and to keep these dealers healthy. So that's why I love actually what Tom in the acquisition side, you can acquire vehicles from anywhere. And I need to say that I'm not against the dealers selling local and customers from buying local. And I realize that if you sell out of state, you don't get the service business to come back. I mean, I understand that. And there's still dealers out there that say, if you don't buy it from me, I'm not going to service your car. I think that's not a good philosophy either. You need to service all cars.
Well, last time I checked, Fix Op still makes money.
They do.
You know, I mean,
They
they're
do.
not making as much as variable right now in some cases, but boy, oh boy, you know, especially a high-end car, when that first service is $3,500, I don't know.
Well, and you can also source a lot of customers through your service department. So you may service a car that they didn't buy there, and their next car they buy there because of the way you treated them in service. So I do believe in buying local and selling local, but to the customers, I again, your customers are all over the country, and I already said it, and you can buy from anywhere in the country too.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you look at what Ford's doing, lots of you look at what BMW is now trying to do, when you look at even Porsche with that IPO recently, I mean, you're definitely seeing manufacturers test the water saying, you know, what can we get away with? So I think as a dealer, yeah, you need to make what you can make, but at the same time, you need to be sensitive to retention. Because that customer who paid $25,000 more now in 4 or 5 years probably going to want another car. They may judge you based on that call, right?
Right. Well, and I remember as a GM, and service was so important, obviously, and they would have a customer that's right at the brink of their warranty being expired, and they would go to my finance team, and my finance team would then try to pitch a warranty to them.
Right.
And that was another source of income as far as I was concerned. And not only that, but taking care of the customer.
Right.
Well, I got pretty upset one day because I realized that General Motors was sending all of my customers a pitch basically to sell warranties and undercutting what pricing that we would have done from my finance department.
You mean they actually tried to sell warranty after the fact?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
to the customers. So, and of course, as I called my rep and I was upset and all those things, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if they could just start selling straight from the manufacturer to the customers, I think they would love that, and basically just let the local dealers service them.
Right.
And I've got good friends of mine that I have a real good guy. His dealership's been there for 89 years, and he's a small Ford dealer, and he called me and he says, "Hey Don, I'm selling. I'm going to auction my building. I took a buyout from Ford, and I mean 89 years of taking care of customers in a local area." And I mean, I still to this moment feel sad about that. Like they're gone now.
My grandfather had a store for 72 years, and then General Motors said too many stores.
Right.
Well, and here's the thing. All you ever do if you go to the manufacturers trading, they talk about building customer loyalty.
Yeah.
Take care of your customers. Customer for life, customer one, customer this, customer that. And of course, we don't want to slag the manufacturers because they don't, they probably have the power to shut us down. But it is a case of, maybe we should all start learning to play better together. I don't think it's right that a CEO of an OEM says, these dealers are doing wrong, but it's right of them. But at the same time, if we look at the dealer margins on new cars, and this is a used car show, over the last 20 years, that margin has shrunk from 15% to probably 7%
or less,
or 8% or less, and it isn't because the cost went up that much.
You mean those expensive buildings didn't justify the cost of that?
No, and anyways, moving right forward, we've got just a few minutes left.
So final thoughts. We're in that.
Final thoughts. We do have somebody else coming on this stage, so they're kicking us off in a minute. We thank everybody. Tom, final thoughts on just on things in general and where we're located right now and used cars.
Yeah, I think we could have spoken for a couple more hours to what you guys were touching on with, I think you're leading to the agency model and why Ford, Jeff Farley rather, was upset about that. So anyways, we could talk for a long time about that. Final thoughts. I appreciate you guys inviting me on. I hope David Long feels better. Feeling saddened that I'm not there at Used Car Week this year, but we'll certainly be back next year.
Oh, and just so you know, we have a shipment going to one of David's dealerships of Cold FX, Flu FX, and Shyness FX.
Airborne, Shyness.
Thank you, Tom.
You could also let him know we did have a guest on the show that had the flu but couldn't make it. He was there temporarily and then realized it was just he was too sick.
All of a sudden, we heard, guys, and then he disappeared.
He tried hard though. It was a valid effort.
Don, thank you very much for being here. I got to tell you something, folks. Check him out on LinkedIn with his shoes. Him and I are going to business together. We're selling Air Jordans for only $125 a piece.
Very comfortable
and,
shoes,
you can
too.
get them at www.donandjeffsellsshoesforlotsofmoney.com.
Yeah.
Don.
I'm just thrilled to be here. I think this is going to be a tremendous week at Used Car Week. If you're here or you're not here and you need help with shipping, please reach out to me directly. I would love to help in any way that I can. And I'm just honored to be on the show.
Thanks very much. And that's Ship Your Car Now, just so you know.
That's right,
Yeah.
and it's Flash Your Tie now, too.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Peter, thank you so much for the constant support. We love having you aboard, and we love to slag all the Jeep dealers and the Tesla boys.
Yeah.
And with that, we're out.
Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
So long. Thank you. We'll be on again at 3 o'clock Western Pacific.
Thanks for joining us. It was a great show, and follow us anywhere you would like on your favorite podcast, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and of course on our YouTube, or subscribe to our own channel.